Hello and welcome to another edition of another book review. This week I'll be reviewing Moon Water by Pam Webber. I'll talk very briefly about the author, go into a spoiler-free overview of the plot, talk about what I liked about the book, what I didn't like about the book, who I'd recommend the book to, and finish off with what I will be reading for next time. Pam Webber has written a few books. I think she's written up to this point 3 novels. Her first novel, Wiregrass, has a connection to this book. I didn't know it before I started, but this book, Moon Water, is a standalone sequel to the first book and shares some of the same characters. She is, my understanding, from the Virginia area and was trained as a nurse practitioner before becoming an author. In this book, Moon Water, I would describe as a YA historical fiction novel. It's set in the summer of 1969, where we follow our main character, whose name is Nettie, 16 years old, and she is at a crossroads with her longtime boyfriend, Andy. They break up, and she works with her friend Wynn to create dream catchers for Wynn's grandmother as part of a vision that Wynn's grandmother has seen. Wynn's grandmother is a member of the Mohawken tribe, and she has kind of brought in the Wynn and Nettie to help do this task for her. She's an elderly woman. She has difficulty doing it herself. And so they are kind of brought in to do that. There's a bunch of other subplots as well. But the main plot is really Wynn and Nettie building these dream catchers for Wynn's maternal grandmother. I did like the way that Pam Webber handled the historical fiction aspect of this novel. Historical fiction sometimes gets bogged down in detail, and I think she did a good job of balancing the amount of historical accuracy with giving you just enough, really, of the town to make it interesting and make it feel like a real place. So I thought that was good. I thought it reminded me a little bit of Manhattan Beach, where it doesn't inundate you with historical knowledge. The book is set in Amherst County, in 1969, so it's not a big city in Virginia. It's kind of a rural area with these characters, and you have kind of that small town feel, and I think she captures that really well. The characters, especially the main characters, are both very likable. Nettie and Wynn, they are 16-year-old girls, and they feel like 16-year-old girls, but are also have strong characters and are kind of working to do the right thing. I think that the book does a very good job, or it's very clear that Pam Webber cares very deeply about the Mohawken culture and getting some of these details right. So the book does feel like it's researched. I don't know if she's a member herself or has connections to the tribe, but in reading the book, when she's describing how the dream catchers are made, or describing Nettie's grandmother, Wynn's grandmother, whose name I believe is Nibby, she's describing Nibby's home and the different powders and things that she has as it relates to herbs and whatnot that she has collected from around where she lives in this kind of mountainous area. I enjoyed that quite a bit, and I think the part of it that I like the most as far as the Mohawken culture, I think the book does go to detail to explain that for these characters at least, there's a Christianity. Wynn and Nettie are both members of a Christian church, and there is a part where Nettie goes and speaks to an elder. I think it's Wynn's. I don't know if it's Wynn's father or if it is another member of the Mohawken tribe, but he explains how for them Christianity and the Mohawken spirituality or religion is able to coexist with Christianity because they share a lot of the same ideas, and I thought that was a nice touch. I didn't really want to read a novel where these two were in clash, and I don't think that's really the book. I think it's I don't want to say a conflict-free book because there is a lot of conflict, but I didn't think it was going to get to that level of it would have been a strange twist to have those two in conflict for most of the book, because it's I would say, a positive novel overall. The things I didn't like, unfortunately, as far as them being likable, I also found Wynn and Nettie to be a bit bland. It was at times where it was hard for me to really picture them or imagine them, and the things that they do, go to church, work on these wind chimes, felt a little bit For people who are kind of on the verge of adulthood, there was just something there that felt a little bland or uninteresting to me. The pacing of it is a little off. There's a major event that happens. I won't spoil it. About 3/4 of the way through the book, and the resolution of that event seems to take a lot of time. And the book resolves all these subplots. And I think the book would have maybe been better pared down if some of these subplots hadn't existed. I don't know how many or if any subplots are brought over from Wiregrass, her first novel, but in reading this, it felt like there was a lot of things that I wasn't particularly interested in. And in general, I'm not a big fan of I didn't realize this was going to be a kind of a YA romance, and so there are some romance tropes from that that I'm not a big fan of. For instance, Nettie breaks up or loses her boyfriend. I'm not sure who dumps who there. And then there's someone who is an outsider who she meets literally the same day or the next day that she's broken up with this guy. And so I was sitting there going, okay, well, maybe there's a chance where she's going to be away from this guy and think about what the relationship meant. And pretty much right away, there's another person kind of thrown into that mix. Maybe that's realistic for some people. I don't know, but that felt a little annoying to me. And kind of going back to her being bland, this kind of ties into this. It's never quite clear where the other high school boys in her town are. This boy is from out of town. There's a younger boy who seems to be infatuated with Nettie. It's never quite clear to me why there's the infatuation there. Nettie's not like great at sports or like a chess champion, and Pam Webber doesn't go to the point of telling you that she's like a very attractive woman or girl. And so it's not clear if she's very physically attractive or what it seems to be, but it seems to be that she's able to pull these people in and maybe it's from the 60s. I don't know if it was just a generational thing. It was unclear to me why people seem to be so drawn to this girl, and I wish it had been maybe more nailed down, at least for me, given the amount of romantic interest there seems to be in her in a way that didn't feel necessarily or organic. I mentioned there's too many subplots, and the other thing that I would say is the dialogue at times didn't feel naturalistic. It felt really scripted more than like these feels like two 16-year-old girls arguing with each other. Nettie has a rival for her boyfriend or her ex-boyfriend's affection, who is kind of her rival throughout the book, and they kind of get into arguments at times, and their back and forth felt very staged. And that character too, I thought was a little stereotypical. I wish there had been a little bit more depth to that character. So those are my issues with the book. When going into it, I didn't realize that it was had pretty strong romance tropes to it, and I think that's one of the reasons that it took me a long time to read it. I think the parts of it that it handled really well. As far as who I would recommend this to, this is a strange book, and the reason it's a strange book is there is a subplot that involves an attempted rape, attempted sexual assault, and everything else about the book seems to me like it would speak really well to a high school audience. But because that is in there, it's not gory or graphic or anything. I think it's handled with the seriousness it's deserving. There's a scene towards the end that I don't know if would have really happened in real life, but that's kind of neither here nor there. But it's hard for me to recommend it because it has that scene in it. I would not recommend it to high schoolers. If you're 18 or 19 and you find yourself reading YA and you want something that's almost on the level of like a Nancy Drew or Hardy Boys with a little bit more maturity to it, I think this actually would not be too bad. I think the writing, when she's writing about Virginia, the countryside of Virginia, painting this picture of this community, I think is quite good. And I think the way she handles religion, the Mohawken religion and the Christianity kind of coexisting, I thought was good. But overall, I realized in reading it, this is maybe not my cup of tea. And the problems I had with it were the problems I had with it. So that's been Water by Pam Webber. If you're interested in reading kind of a YA mystery, but you're not put off by maybe an attempted sexual assault, then maybe this is something that you may find interesting. If you like historical fiction and want to read more that have some kind of indigenous spirit to it as far as indigenous characters, then maybe something to pick up. Next time I'm going to be reading, I'm going to be reading on ebook. Next time I'm going to be reading Richard Reeves' Dream Hoarders. Until next time, please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Until next time, bye.